Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Inside with your host Alamdar Khan. And yes, as you know, we give you sports information from all across the globe. You guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is at the rate of Indus News Sports. That works both for Twitter and for Instagram. But anyways, we'll go to the headlines first. And yes, in the world of cricket, Pakistan versus West Indies. Yes, Pakistan has won a rain-affected T20 series against West Indies 1-0, even though the last T20 match also was abandoned. And yes, from the world of Olympics football, yes, Spain snatched 1-0 victory against Japan. Not to forget, Brazil won against Mexico to reach the finals. And yes, from Tokyo Olympics, we talk about Pakistan's Arshad Nadeem, who actually qualifies for the final Javelin throw competition. Let's hope he gets the gold. And yes, from the world of Olympics again, we talk about artistic swimming. Greece have withdrawn from Tokyo Olympics artistic swimming competition after 5 members of their team have tested positive for COVID-19. And yes, those were the headlines. Not to forget that we're going to start off with discussing the world of sports with regards to Pakistan versus West Indies. Yes, Pakistan finally managed to win the series. The last T20 also got postponed because of the rain, but eventually Pakistan did manage to win one of the matches. But to discuss the in-depth analysis of the team, we have with us a former cricketer, Yasir Arafat. Yasir, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Great. So Yasir, we always have your in-depth wisdom in terms of the team itself. So obviously Pakistan managed to still win the series in terms of the rain. But overall perspective in terms of how do you think ready they are in terms of the team is something that crucial. Why? Because October is nearby. We all know World Cup T20. All the teams are getting ready. So how do you see this impacting the performance in terms of our team for the future?
I think it's good that Pakistan have won the series. You can't have asked more than easier series than this.
Right.
By playing one game, winning that game, and won the series. So I think it's a good thing for the morale of the team, especially for Babar Azam. But in terms of preparation for the World Cup, I would say that there are certain areas which Pakistan needs to try in that series before going into the World Cup,
right,
which we couldn't because of the circumstances, the weather condition. We don't have any control over the weather, but it is panned up like that. So I think the preparation for the World Cup, we are still not sure for the top 3 batsmen who's going to play, who's going to open the inning. We're
Right.
still not sure about the middle order. And again, the bowling department, apart from Hassan Ali, no one is performing well on the consistent basis. There are a lot of things we need to address. We need to make sure before going into the World Cup, we need to sort those things. And we still got 7 to 8 games, I think,
Right.
before the World Cup. So there is less time for the World Cup, for the preparation.
Right.
But again, good news that Pakistan have won the series.
Right. Besides the fact that Pakistan won, I would also want to ask you in terms of obviously their previous tour going to England. But now, as we know that the scheduling of the World Cup is now shifted to the UAE and it's official now. We can see it on their website as well. So how do you see that impacting those players specifically? I'll talk about now the England team because they have a different condition. We were there in their condition, and I think we have played enough matches here in terms of the UAE side. So do you think this overall perspective will be impacting the game for Pakistan or not?
I would say the players or the team don't have any problem now coming into the UAE playing against other teams. If you see the players, they've been playing. If you talk about particularly England players,
Right.
they've been playing IPL for the last so many years, and there is and again IPL has been happening. Rescheduling their remaining matches in Dubai before UAE before the World Cup.
Right.
So it's not going to be alienated conditions for anybody because so many players are going to play IPL. And again, if you see the composition of England team against Pakistan, they tried their right combination by having 3 spinners against Pakistan, and that worked for England.
Right.
They already have Adil Rashid and Moeen Ali, but they tried their another spinner, which is Parkinson, who bowled really well against Pakistan and took some key wickets against Pakistan. And then, the teams are making their team or their combination for the World Cup, looking to play in UAE. So
Right.
We have the resources. We have Imad Wasim in our team, Nawaz, Shadab Khan and Hafiz. Good to see Hafiz started bowling again for Pakistan. So we
Right.
have the resources. The problem is they don't perform on the consistent basis. If they perform in every game, then I'm sure Pakistan have a good chance to qualify for the top 4 teams.
Well, let's hope that truly happens and we actually look forward to that. But talking about, you just mentioned IPL, I would just want to have a quick word with you with regards to, obviously, there's a lot of chanting with regards to sports activities being involved into the political side. So, what's your take on KPL itself? Because I think we all are out there to promote sports. Why is it now to a point that everybody is making it so political for everybody?
I think again, I always said that, and most of the cricketers from India or Pakistan, they always say that you should keep separate cricket on one side and politics on the other side.
Right.
So somehow when it comes to India, Pakistan, or rather Kashmir Premier League,
Right.
things turn out to be a bit dicey and. Same with the KPL. We have seen that Indian Cricket Board sent a letter to the respective cricket boards. Like Harshal Gibbs tweeted
Right.
that his board asked him to not go into and not participate in the KPL, and
Right.
rather and so as the England players.
Right.
So, but I heard that Tilakaratne Dilshan and Harshal Gibbs, they are coming. But again, you should keep those things like politics on one side, sports on the other side, and just promote wherever the cricket is happening. You should promote the cricket. Yeah.
Right, I absolutely agree, because it has come up to a point that it has gone to an extremist level in terms of India's behavior towards it. And not to forget, if you remember, one England player was forced to, indirectly forced to not be a part of it. That's not the essence of the game, if I'm not wrong. Because we as sports people, sports individuals who want the sport to continue, we want the smiles on the faces of everyone else. It is always this current scenario when someone has to make it political and extremism.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, again, the players who wants to come, we should welcome those players, and the players who can't come because of those issues with that Indian thing, or the respective boards are stopping them not to go there. I think those players are already retired. If they come, it will be good for Pakistan, good for KPL. If they don't come, again, if that league will happen, that will definitely will promote cricket in Pakistan, in Kashmir particularly, and the players who get to show their showcase their talent, for the PSL in the future for Pakistan cricket. So I would say that the KPL should happen, and we all should support KPL.
Absolutely. Now, I would definitely want to come over to the World Cup side. And as mentioned, on their official website, we talk about the Super 12. We talk about Pakistan's group. So we have, in terms of our group, we have India, Pakistan, New Zealand, and Afghanistan. So how do you see the development of this group in particular? Because I think it's going to be super interesting to see this World Cup T20 shaping up for all these nations, and specifically our group. I think it's going to be interesting. So what's your take on this specific group?
I think ICC events, particularly the World Cup, whether it's a 50-over World Cup or a T20, every game, every team, is very critical and very important. You can't take any team for granted. Let's say if in our group, if you say Afghanistan,
Right.
Afghanistan is one of the dangerous teams around the world at the moment, especially when it comes to T20 cricket, because all of their players around the clock, 12 months, they play T20 franchise cricket everywhere, whether it's Big Bash, IPL, PSL, any leagues they are playing. So they got the players, they got the specialist T20 players. So you can't take any team for granted.
Right.
So you have to play every game at your best to qualify for the top 4, or rather to play the finals.
Right. And I think that one thing that, we also need to learn from the fact that, we were expecting to see another match, but that didn't really happen. But let's hope in terms of our performance as a team, because as you mentioned earlier, we still lack that issue of, having that consistency. Maybe, there are times only when we see Babar Azam or Mohammad Rizwan, or maybe one or two odd individuals at the very start managing to be there. But once they break in, I think all the teams, it comes down crippling. So how do you see, are we devising a strategy in terms of, because World Cup is literally nearby, so how do you see our team managing to cope with that?
I think we have tried so many players over the past 1 or 2 years. We have given so many caps to players, but the problem is we were not consistent on the selection. We bring the guy in, play him 1 or 2 games, and if he performs, that's fine. If he doesn't perform, we
Right.
drop him straight away after 1 or 2 games, which
Right.
is the bad way of going forward, or shaping up your team for the World Cup, for the biggest event,
Right.
which is T20 World Cup. So we need to be consistent on our selection. If we give a guy a proper chance, at least 4 to 5 games, allow him to showcase his talent, then we can have a proper in a position that we can be a proper team. From 1 or 2 games, you can't expect the players to perform like all of a sudden. You can't have a man of the matches from 1 or 2 games.
Right.
So you need to be consistent on your selection
Right.
if you want to do well. Looking at Pakistan team for the last 1 or 2 years, 20 to 25 players we have tested, but we are not sure at the moment which is our first 11 or first 15 for the World Cup.
Right, Yasser, you're absolutely right. Well, anyways, thank you very much for your in-depth analysis in terms of the world of cricket. It is always a pleasure having you on board, sir.
Thank you.
So that was Yasser Arfan. Yes, he obviously did mention in-depth analysis of how the cricket is shaping up, because ultimately Pakistan did manage to win the series against West Indies. But yes, we need to be prepared in terms of the World Cup T20 that's happening in October. Anyways, guys, we'll take a quick break. Once we come back from the break, there is more news from the world of sports. See you guys after the break. And yes, welcome back from the break. And yes, before the break, we were discussing Pakistan versus West Indies. Yes, the eventual conclusion to the series is 1-0. But not to forget, we have more news from the world of sports, which is the Olympics. Yes, it's still on, and we're going to talk about football as discussed. To discuss football, obviously, we'll talk about how Spain managed to get there to the semi-finals against Japan 1-0. And not to forget that, Brazil finally made its way to the finals as well, who are the defending champions. To discuss the in-depth analysis, how things have shaped up, we have with us David all the way from the UK. David, welcome to the show. So David, I would start off with the journey of, the entire perspective, in the entire football tournament in terms of Olympics, because Olympics is all about the gold. So I'm going to start off with obviously the hosting country, Japan. Obviously, they still want their very best, but unfortunately now it's 1-0 and Japan is off the track in terms of the pursuit for gold. So how did you see the first match in terms of Spain versus Japan, and then followed up by, we'll talk about the next match later. So how do you see Spain managing to get there?
Well, it was a very cagey game, as a lot of these games seem to have been. It had a very slow start, this tournament. I guess there's maybe two factors there. One is the heat. It's a very, very humid, very, very humid to be playing football.
Right.
And I guess the second is just the nerves. I mean, you're at the real business end of the tournament. But I thought it was deserved. I mean, I would have liked to see Japan do better. I think it's a shame for Japan, and they were a bit unlucky that they didn't have anybody in the stadium, because they would have got real home advantage then. But it just took one incisive moment of real class from Asensio to this wonderful. I mean, he made it look so ridiculously easy, but that one curving thing right into the corner, it almost looked absurdly simple. But of course, that's a sign of real class, and that's what made the difference.
Right, and I think in terms of when we look into Spain, obviously Spain has a big history of the high-end footballers. But I think Japan even managing to only concede one goal. But like you said, I think if the stadium was full, things surely would have been better.
Yes, I believe so. Spain are one of those teams that have a lot invested in Olympic football. They haven't won. I think 1992 was the last time they won. Right. Now, my own country, Team GB, they didn't even field the team. They said it was logistically difficult to get everybody, England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, get it all together. But I don't think there's the real will there. I think that some countries are more invested in this Olympic football than others. Right. And I think Spain are one of them. England, I'm afraid, it's sad that England don't really. I mean, we've just come off the Euro 2020, right. And of course England reached the final, and there was huge interest in that.
Right.
And maybe it's hard then for players to lift themselves. I mean, this is the same also for Spain and Brazil. We just had the Copa America as well.
Right.
It's time to lift yourself to such a few weeks after these massive tournaments, which both took place at the same time. And, you know, and especially in the kind of weather that there is there, then I'm actually surprised, I'm amazed that there has been the commitment that there has been, actually.
Right. I would also want to ask, because you just mentioned obviously Euro 2020 and you also discussed Copa America. I would surely want to ask and probably have your opinion on it because of the fact that, you know, it was Brazil versus Argentina there in Copa America. And then we talk about Euro 2020. And the teams who have been investing themselves in these tournaments, I think when it comes to the gold, because when it comes to Olympics, it's purely based on only the gold and, you know, the country individuals trying to get there. But the teams, most of the teams that have actually reached, you know, this Olympic, you know, tournament are not the same individuals. Some team just could not make it there because of the fact of the COVID-19 situation. So I think the energy level was maybe not as enthusiastic as it was supposed to be because, but yet again, we're talking about Olympics. I think Olympics is a big deal. So what do you think about this? Because yes, in Euro 2020, it's a different ball game. In Copa America, it's a different. But what do you see lacking here?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, obviously other teams, they mostly are playing under 23 players, so they're not always the most experienced players. Having said that, you've got people like Dani Alves, who's 38, who's playing.
Right.
But I think it's hard. I think the difficulty is with football in the Olympics is that in other sports like swimming, rowing, track and field athletics, those are, the Olympics is the pinnacle.
Right.
And in Olympic football, for football, the Olympics isn't the pinnacle. I mean, I think it offers great opportunities for certain countries to, you know, to get sort of world exposure.
Right.
But I just think there isn't a 100% global commitment or the same level of interest there is in European, you know, the European competition or Copa Americana. That's where the real interest and the real passion and the real investment is for fans. And as I say, just coming so soon after those things, I mean, it's a big ask, really, but it does give opportunity for countries like Honduras or whatever to express themselves. I mean, I think that there is definitely a place for football at the Olympics. I sometimes wonder if it might be more interesting if, for instance, like you had the rugby sevens, maybe have a sort of variation, football variation, have 5-a-side, 7-a-side, or something like that, something that's specific to the Olympics, and that might pique people's interest.
Right, but in terms of Olympics, if you look into it, I totally agree with your point of view. But when it comes to Olympics, we know how things were in terms of the Olympics. It was being delayed. Not only with that, I think it also went up with Euro 2020. It went up with all the tournaments out there. But now, finally, it came. But yet again, the same COVID-19 protocols, the state of emergency in Japan. So there have been various ups and downs, not only for the management, but I guess for the players as well.
Yes, I think so. It does make things very difficult. There's probably the clubs, the clubs to which the players, play are probably very concerned as well. They don't want to. There was a match, I think it was against Egypt, one of the matches, and that was pretty dirty. And obviously, the last thing that teams like Barcelona want, for instance, is players injured in an Olympic tournament. I mean, they would probably see it as low priority, you know. But so it is good that there is the participation. They have overcome a lot of obstacles, as you say, COVID-19.
Right.
There's the further difficulty, I think, of having to play in empty stadiums, which I think detracts, football especially. It's not so bad with sort of sports like athletics or the swimming or something like that, because a small number of people can make a lot of noise. But in football, you really, really miss the crowd. So that's a factor as well. But the game, there has been some good football, but there maybe isn't the sort of the level of passion on. Maybe not so much the players, but perhaps the fans.
I absolutely agree.
But now we're at the business end.
Yeah,
but
I
now
absolutely
we are at the
agree.
business end, and it gets more interesting.
Right.
It
And
gets more interesting.
I'd also want
Very-
to ask you about the second, obviously, match that, I'd rather have your opinion on. But like you said, the empty stadium syndrome is still there. Brazil beating Mexico and getting there into the finals as well. What's your take on that? But yes, the empty stadium syndrome, as discussed, will be there.
Yeah, I mean, that seemed to be quite a one-sided game at times, definitely, with Brazil. And they fielded, there were some, stars in that team. Mexico, I mean, Mexico never seemed to have the beating of Brazil. There always seems to be a kind of limit for Mexico. And it never really felt like they were, they were able to prevail. And it was very slow towards the end, and it seemed like they were waiting for penalties. But people say that penalties is a matter of chance, but penalties, I think, is actually a footballing test. It's a test of nerve, it's a test of skill. And I think that the fact that Brazil won on penalties wasn't just a chance thing, it was a sign of their superiority. Also, the thing about Brazil is it reminds me of previous Olympics do you remember the terrible 7-1 beating they took at the hands of Germany?
Right.
And I think sometimes if they've had a disappointment in a World Cup like that, then an Olympics is a chance for them to have some sort of redemption. And that's what happened after that particular result in the next Olympics. Brazil, sort of enjoyed a measure of redemption. I think this time, that's certainly the case, because obviously they were beaten by Argentina in Copa America. Right. And I think they will really go into this final feeling that they've got a point to prove.
Yeah, I think let's hope for the best for Brazil, because I know that, that's exactly what I thought. They lost against Argentina in Copa America. Well, David, thank you so very much for being a part of the show and discussing the world of Olympic football with us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
So that was David, and that was his input with regards to the football, yes, in Olympics. And finally, as discussed earlier, so now it's going to be Spain facing Brazil for the gold. Let's see what happens. And yes, Brazil needs to ensure that, they make a comeback. Why? Because they also lost against Argentina in Copa America. So I think the team is trying to make effort to get there. But anyways, we'll discuss the Olympic javelin throw. Yes, a proud moment for Pakistan when we talk about Arshad Nadeem, who actually qualifies for the final javelin throw. And he threw 85.16 meter. And not to forget, he was placed in the Group B contest in which the athletes had to throw a minimum of 83.5 meter. So I think it's a proud moment for Pakistan and definitely for Arshad. We wish him the very best ahead, and we hope that he manages to get the gold for Pakistan, and I think that would definitely be an honor. And his main competitors right now is Neeraj Chopra, who's from India, and Germany's Johannes. So these two individuals are the people who can actually come up to the point of fighting for the gold with him. But not to forget that in our show we already discussed in terms of Arshad Nadeem's, and it was told to us by one of our correspondents, one of our senior reporters, who actually told us that do not forget that Arshad Nadeem is actually going to make sure that he gets the gold for Pakistan. So we wish him the best. Anyways, this was from the world of javelin throw. I'll quickly jump over to the world of artistic swimming. Yes, another update with regards to the COVID-19 situation. Yes, Greece have actually withdrawn from Tokyo Olympics swimming competition. 5 members of the team have actually tested positive, and the coronavirus situation still grows on and on and on. And let's hope that it does not come to the point of maybe affecting more people, because not only those 5 individuals backed off, the entire team have now quarantined themselves. So let's hope all goes well. And Greece actually have won 3 medals at Tokyo Olympics, including 2 gold. But I think this is a serious agenda when it comes to COVID-19 protocols. So anyways, this was pretty much it. And let's hope we all take care of ourselves in terms of COVID-19 situation. Besides the fact that we have been vaccinated, that's not the case. The point is you still need to be safe because of the Delta virus out there, not only in Japan, but I think everywhere around the world. But anyways, guys, this was pretty much it from the world of sports. You guys can reach out to us on our social media handle, which is @Indus News Post. Till then, take good care of yourselves, and bye-bye.